Hello there. So today we're going to talk about something that I'm sure a lot of you have an interest on. And I want to share with you. When I share these strategies, by the way, to me, is I have a lot of fun doing that. And the reason is because I feel like I have this best secrets that I have to share with you. And yeah, and I just can't wait to do that. So today we're going to talk about how I can get sellers to tell me yes. I don't have a lot of the problems that a lot of people have out there. They say they have a hard time with the sellers, and I'm going to explain to you how, here, and why in just a few minutes. So, because I'm sure you can relate to this. A lot of you that have tried to do deals, you feel like you do everything right. You run the numbers. You feel like you're saying the right things. You're at the right place at the right time, but then when you submit a contract, it just gets turned down. Or you don't even get to submit the contract because the seller just doesn't respond, right? And so, one of the things that I realized from the beginning of my career is that it's not about the contract at all. The contract is a formality. It's about really understanding what the seller is trying to do and see how you can come up with a solution. That's it. Forget the contracts, forget everything. Yes, we're going to talk about contracts and what contracts to do and some cool strategies there, but don't put emphasis on the contract. Put the emphasis on how can I create a solution. One of the important things I learned, and is in our book, you see here in the back, that I co-wrote with Liz, is one of my first coaches when I started working 40 years ago. She was a real estate agent, not really a coach. And she's in her 90s now. Her name is Donna, and she's still active in real estate. But I asked her, says, what is your secret to have been so successful for all these years? And she just says, I just fix things. I help people. That's it. Okay. It wasn't anything else. I fix things and I help people. And so if you're going with that attitude, you really do something different there than anybody else. Because let's face it, a lot of real estate investors, especially out there, they're looked at the, you know, um, used car salesman. I'm sorry, if you sells used car, I've sold used cars too, so don't get me wrong, but they see them in the wrong light, right? They feel like you know something that they don't, and you're there to scam them. So going with different attitude, like I'm here to see what we can do to make this a win-win situation. I'm here to see what's going on in your life that you need to sell, because that's the other thing. You want to go with people that need to sell, not that they want to sell necessarily. I want to sell where I live. Am I motivated to sell? No, really. But if you come with the right price, I will sell, right? So I want to sell, but I'm not really, I don't need to sell. So that's a subtle difference. And when you understand that, then everything else develops from there. Okay, so that's super important. Now, I want to mention here briefly, if you do want more strategies, and we have something really powerful coming up. Now, also, let's address the elephant in the room. Okay, so why do sellers walk away from perfectly good offers? Well, the first thing is they don't need to sell. That's the biggest one. They want to sell, they're testing the market. If they get their price, they really don't need to sell. That's a huge, right? They don't have their back against the wall. They don't have, and not everybody wants to be in real estate, by the way. Okay, that's the other thing to keep in mind. You think real estate 24/7. I think real estate 24/7, but 90%, 95% of the population out there doesn't. Okay, so to them, it might be that it's a burden. They inherited this house, or they cannot fix this house, or they have violations on this house, whatever situation, or they're married and now they're getting a divorce and they don't want this house, right? So there are so many reasons. So it's a burden. To you is the most amazing thing, but not to them. So that's the first thing. And a lot of time it's not about you. It's not you, it's them. Okay. It's not about you. It's not about the price. It's not anything wrong that you do or say. It's just they really not that motivated. And they feel like you're just coming in and like, vulture circling, seeing if you're gonna fall. Nobody likes that, right? I mean, you wouldn't like that. So that's the third thing. It's about attitude. So how do we do that? How do we get through to that? I'm going to give you three things that are going to revolutionize the way you look at the contracts, the way you look at approaching sellers. Okay, so really stay tuned. I'm setting up here the back end, and trust me, this video is going to be super short, but I'm going to tell you that. But I want to kind of understand the psychology, because when you approach a seller, first of all, where is the seller coming from? Did you find them just driving around the neighborhood? Did they come because the property is in foreclosures, has code violation? Did they find it because they inherited the property from a trust or in probate? Did you find this property because maybe it was a dilapidated rentals, tired landlords? Did you find this property because it was on the MLS, but it's been on the MLS for so long? Or is it for sale by owner, but he has been trying to sell it for a long time? Did they come to you as a referral, right? I'm going on a rampage here about things, but that's the thing. I gave you, by the way, a boatload of ideas on where to get properties. But the thing is this: wherever this comes from, the first thing you have to realize is this: who is this person? What's he trying to do? Okay, why does he even consider selling the property? Because somebody approaches you and say, you want to sell your house, and you don't want to sell your house, might get aggravated, right? You say, what is this person that's trying to get me to sell the house? I don't want to sell the house. And that's why sometimes people are rude. So that's why you really need to go for people that need to sell. No, it's want to sell, exactly, right? So again, very, very subtle ways of looking at it. And what I gave you in the last few minutes is subtle ways to understand the psychology behind it. Because once you understand that, the next step that I'm going to give you here is going to be a no-brainer, okay, to get you to say yes. But you have to understand the psychology behind it. So you might have to re-listen to this video if you missed it, or if you do it, because I gave you a lot of golden nuggets here. And that's why for all these years, for me, it's never been an issue really getting properties to start to say yes. It was never an issue. So when people say nowadays I have an issue with them, I'm like, why? How? Right? Because I understand the psychology behind it. There is a great book, by the way, side note here, is called Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert. And it tells you about, and it's good for everything in life, for sales or anything, but it tells you how people think, how they react to certain things, in a normal way, not just about real estate. If you do this, why people react like that. And it's very eye-opening on how people think and react to different situations. So it's a great book. I recommend you read it, because it gives you an insight on how people reactions are, especially when you're dealing with people that are strangers, how they react to other people. Okay. So now, before I get into the core here, which is the last few minutes, that I'm going to tell you exactly how I do this, paperwork wise. We talked about the psychology of this, but now let's talk about the tools, right? I just want to make a last call to say that go to the link and get your name on the insiders list, as I call it. I don't like to call wait list, but we're gonna share with you a lot more training and a lot more insights to different things. Okay, so make sure you get on this particular list, and also we're gonna give you a special way for you to get what I'm gonna talk about here in a second, which are the tools. So what tools do I need in order to get in front of a seller? Okay, well, depending on the situation, but I'm going to talk about three important crucial things, and I would like you to comment underneath the video if these were really eye-opening for you, or if it's something you've heard before. Either way, it's fine. Most of the time I hear that people say, I never heard of it. So anyway, first one here: keep the contract simple. You probably heard this before, using these 15 pages contracts in fine prints and all that. Don't do that. You open yourself from the seller saying, oh, I need to get my attorney, or I need to think about it. I need to read 15 pages of fine print, and there's a very fine print. And so, it's going to complicate things. At the end of the day, a contract can be written literally on a paper napkin. Okay, you have to have five things in a contract. You have to have the date of today, let's say, the date of when the contract is going to be executed or finalized by, which is the closing date, the name of the parties, and the address of the property. That's it. And I'm sorry, and the monetary consideration, $10, a jet ski, whatever. It has to be something of value that can be put into this contract. No joke here, I have written contract on paper napkins. Okay. I mean, when you have somebody that you have a conversation, they're ready to go, and the only thing you can find is a paper napkin in your car, that's what you will do, So that's a contract. Then I went back home and wrote it in a formal paper, but for the time being, that signature was valid. They couldn't back away. So keep it simple. The way we keep the contract is honestly like 2 pages, and what I put on there is 1 to 2 clauses to protect me. That's it. We have either the business partner approval contingency, I have a private lender contingency, I have a building inspection contingency, whatever the case might be, but it's to protect you so that, in case you have to back away. That's one thing. That's it. Don't make it heavy. You don't need to have a bunch of contingencies in there. Say, this is what I want to offer. This is what I want to close by. This is my monetary consideration. And I want a contingency of 2-3 weeks to get my business or private lending. That's it. Even if you're wholesaling, that's what I use. Second thing, I like to call cover letter. So if you're offering on a property that is a little bit below the asking price, okay, I just send the contract in, have a conversation with the seller and send the contract. If you are sending something that's way below what he's asking, and he's going to have a sticker shock, do a cover letter. Explain, how did you get to that number, right? You didn't pull it out of a hat. How did you get to it? It could be based on comps. It could be based on the property needs a lot of work. It could be based on the location of the property, right? Whatever it is. How did you come up with a number? Think about it. Why did you come up with a number? And be honest. They say, yeah, I came up with this number, but honestly, there is a lot of work that needs to be done on the property. And at the end of the day, I have to make a profit. I'm not going to do the work for free. Or, I am an investor. I'm not going to live in the property. So, whatever it is, be honest. Because that's the thing. A seller might not think about that. They're going to think, the property is worth $250 after the work is fixed up. It's going to take $50,000 to do the work. So if I sell it $200, it's going to make sense. No, it's not going to make sense. What about the time that I have to get to work? Time is money, right? I need to come up ahead 10-15% equity just because of sweat equity I put into the property. And if I am now doing it myself, I'm also selling to somebody else. Well, again, agents get paid commissions. So even if I'm not an agent, shouldn't I get compensated for bringing parties together, right? That's the way you look at it as a wholesaler. Yeah, $10, $15, $20,000. He's probably going to pay that in commissions with a bunch of inspections that, they come behind it with people trailing on the property. So, I have another training that talks about how to basically claim the obvious with a seller to get them to say, it's more advantageous to work with me as an investor than as a real estate agent, which, by the way, I have been both at the same time. So a lot of time I said, yeah, sure, I can list your property, but at the end of the day, it's more advantageous you work with me as an investor, right? So that's the second thing. So cover letter explaining what it is. Third and last thing is the three-prong contract. This is something that, is, pat on my back here, is genius, okay? Because the thing is this, you're not giving a seller a yes or no answer. You're telling the seller, these are 2-3 options and choose one. One could be that, sorry, I am looking here in my notes. One could be that is, you tell them straight out offer. Okay, you want $200,000 for the property. I can give you 160, closing 4 weeks. Boom. In the back of your mind, it's a wholesale, right? But you're not going to call it like that. Okay, so this is a cash offer. I can give you this in 4 weeks, done. The second could be that you're going to structure a creative offer, a lease option to buy, a contract for deed, an owner financing, an assignment, or a wholesaling lease option, any of these vehicles to do it. And the third one is you do a partner offer, like a Novation contract. Basically, Novation is like, where on offer number 2, you can offer an assignment, which is basically you're going to sign the contract to an end buyer for a fee. So you're actually partnering with the buyer for the fee. On Novation, you're actually partnering with the seller. And, we train that in our program. So it's a little different. You look at a partnership with the seller, number 3, and partnership with the buyer, number 2. You're not going to call it like that exactly. So, the way I structure my three-prong contract is actually broken down on how I do each one and what's in for them at the end. And then they can make a decision. But see, this way, I give them 3 decisions. Cash offer is this. number two is this, and number three is that, and he's going to make different type of profits on each deal. The higher the profit, the more he has to wait, basically, which is innovation. So this is how I do it. And when you do any of these I just told you, combination of, or all three of them sometime in the same time, trust me, 9 out of the 10 sellers will say yes. So I know I threw a lot of you in just a few minutes. So hopefully this was very informative. So it's like, it's too good to not share with the world. Okay. Take care.